The True Ambition podcast with John Zink is brought to you by IT Avalon. IT Avalon, IT staffing and professional services done right. Visit our sponsor at itavalon.com. Now, welcome to True Ambition.
Everybody, welcome to the True Ambition podcast. My name is John Zink. And I'm honored today to be joined by my friend, Robin Glasco. And where are you joining me from today?
I am joining you from, I like to call it District 1, aka the nation's capital, on this fine, rainy, gloomy day.
Well, it's kind of gloomy here in California today, too. So she is the CEO and founder of Bambü Roots.
Yes.
And talk about Bambü Roots a little bit. What do you guys do?
So I like to say we help leaders get unstuck. So I call myself a retired corporate executive, or actually a recovering corporate executive. I left corporate America after about 27 years back in 2018. And it was because of a failure of leadership, being just pissed off with the pace and rate of change happening in healthcare, the industry that I spent all of my career in. And I figured I could do more damage, do more good on the outside than on the inside. So started my company, and we help folks for example, my latest client was with Walmart to help them launch their innovation lab, help them get going on a number of medical centers starting in Georgia. And now I'm working with a company called BioIQ, and they are a diagnostic virtual lab, if you will. Virtual lab, that sounds very interesting. But it's self-testing at home for health screening, particularly in COVID. That's much needed. So.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. Now, when you're talking about the pace, I'm figuring you're saying it's a very slow pace that you were tired of.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I am, we are a quicker, better, faster, cheaper society, and healthcare moves in reverse. And I'm not talking, there's definitely a lot more pace in terms of the clinical side, in terms of, curing diseases, getting a vaccine for COVID, for example. But in terms of the administrative side, the cost has gone up year over year. It's very predictable in terms of you can guarantee it's going to go up. But it just moves quite slow. And that's because it's I think, an old mindset that a lot of executives have. And so when I work with a lot of my clients, there's one part of doing the work, but everything starts with shifting of mindset.
So now Robin is also a published author. And your book is called Kiss Your Dragons.
Yes.
Now, is this about people with bad breath?
No. So, there's a person that was a catalyst to me leaving my corporate role. His name is Sean Nason. I actually hired him when I was the Chief Innovation Officer at Blue Cross Blue Shield to help stand up the innovation team. And we met and just we're magnets. And so he was one of the folks that was in my ear about, you should probably think about leaving corporate world. And I worked real closely with him. He and I would do a number of keynotes and workshops on how people can get unstuck. And we talk about mindsets. And so when we think about a dragon, dragons are these big, hairy, scary, fire-breathing things that we think about conquering. And so if we change our mindset and have more of a Daenerys, I'm a Game of Throner, have more of a Daenerys mindset, that they should not necessarily be fear, but really shift your thinking about how we view fear, how we view this thing called a dragon, that we stand a chance to be able to tackle some of our fears, whether it's fear of change, fear of going without, fear of the unknown. there's a lot of fears that most are made up in our heads. And so shifting our mindset to not fear or slay the dragon, but more kiss and embrace the dragon so that you can overcome and whatever fear might be in your way. And if not, you might just want to say, the goddess, and just
well, I everything you were just talking about really talks to me. You know, I've been in recovery for a while and been sober for like 6 years, and everything that we talk about in recovery is 1,000 forms of fear. And what I found out is that most people walking around in regular life are just walking around with all these different forms of fear, and a lot of people are paralyzed by it. Yeah. So this sounds like a great book for anybody to read.
And it's a short read. You can find it on Amazon. You can pre-order it now. Kiss Your Dragons. Look me up, and you can pre-order it. It'll be available on the 15th.
So is it business based, or is it for everybody to read?
It is for everybody to read. So when I was on this journey with, actually, you know, there were many stops along the journey that led me to start Bambü Roots, and actually, it's worth taking a step back to talk about why it's called Bambü Roots. So the first stop on the journey, or actually probably the second stop on the journey, was about 15 maybe years ago, when I was at Kaiser Permanente and was attending an internal conference that about 1,500 people. And there was a guest speaker by the name of, I think, Greg Bell. He works primarily with the Oregon Duck football team. But he talked to them about watering your bamboo. And so he talks about, in terms of leadership and developing people primarily, and developing skills, is that, you know, bamboo is the fastest growing plant of all plants in the world, and it can grow over the course of 24 hours, like something like 90 feet or something ridiculous like that. And it is stronger than any other plant. I mean, people use it as a source of building materials, as part of their economic, thriving in the economy for food, etc. If you're a panda, but in order to get that type of unprecedented growth, you need to water it. You need to water it constantly for 2 to 3 years before you see any fruits of your labor. And again, going back to being a quicker, better, faster, cheaper society, we have gone away from spending the time and investing the time in our people, and we want instant results. Right. I told you yesterday that you need to do this today, and we just don't move that fast. So if we move that fast, it's at the surface level. It's not rooted. And so I always loved that story. It has so many layers and levels to it, whether you're raising kids at work, kids at home. It has so many different levels to it. And so I always said I want to use that in some way, shape, or form. So when I started my company, I was like, I want to call it Bambü. And of course, knowing me, I can't do everything by the book. And so I wanted to call it different, and come to find out the original spelling of bamboo is actually how it's spelled, B-A-M-B-U. So, and then from the roots, as I mentioned, there's one part of, making sure you are, making change that can last over time. But the other part of it, so I have a strategy and an innovation hat that I wear. The other part of the roots is that before we start solving a problem, you got to get to the root of it. And most people, 99 problems, there's a song about it, are solved up here. And it doesn't go down into the root of the problem. And it's like, oh, I got it. But there is, what I've learned from my innovation experience is that, there's a process, there's a way to get to that root of a problem, so that you're spending most of your time identifying the problem. If you have, I think there's a quote that I suck at. So if you have like $100, I'm going to spend $99 of that to identify the right problem. And then, then the rest of that becomes, easier to solve. But as organizations, we solve a problem up here, and I have not met one who's like 2 years later, 3 years later, 2 months later, realize they're not getting the results that they intended to get because you're likely solving the wrong problem. And again, this is a long way to answer your question about the book, is it for business or personal? It cuts across so many different areas. So the learnings that I've had along my journey that around this watering the bamboo, it applies to if you're in relationships, any type of relationship, business or personal. If you're raising kids, if you're caring for adults, if you're trying to get something at the DMV, it works across the board. And I wish I would have learned it earlier in my career. So that's what the book is about. It's applicable to anyone who's interested in conquering something that gets in their way. Or as I like to say, if you're feeling stuck, it would be a good use of your time.
Great.
So read it in a day. It's short.
So then the other thing that you're doing is you're the host of The Pink Couch.
Pink.
Talk about The Pink Couch a little bit.
Yeah. So that is, wow. So so 3 years ago, September, what year are we in? 21? September 23rd, 2017, one of my best friends died during childbirth. And her child, who's now 3, survived. And she actually has two older kids that are a little bit younger than my kid's age. And it just floored me. It floored me that in the 21st century that a woman could die during childbirth. I mean, in this country, I was floored. And then that set off a course of actions started learning about, wow, up to women of color are up to 4 times more likely to die during childbirth. Had no freaking clue. And I have 2 kids and I'm in healthcare and I work with doctors. And right. I'm like, how did I not know this? And then, being Serena comes out and she had a very similar story that was, she would have died had she not been an advocate for herself as an elite athlete. She would have died. And the same thing that happened to my girlfriend happened to Serena. The difference is Serena was able to be a advocate for herself, knowing the history of her blood clots. The similarity between them is they were both people of color. And my girlfriend was Filipino, but still people of color. When we walk into an office, there's a perception that's there and our concerns are not taken seriously. So anyway, so that was a catalyst where I just felt like I had to do something. And then I was living in Boston at the time, and then Congressman Joe Kennedy, yeah, he's that Kennedy, related to those Kennedys. He was pulling together a small roundtable on maternal mortality. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to be a part of that. And so I was hearing the stories of so many women who have lost family members, who've lost kids, who also went through some very traumatic experiences around maternal mortality or maternal challenges that existed. And again, I'm someone that I can't just sit idly by. So, just given the roots of my family, who we are as servant leaders, I'm like, I have to do something. And so my 2 other girlfriends, there were 7 of us, now there's 6. We had always heard, yeah, y'all should have your own show because we act up quite a bit. John knows that I shack the fool often, particularly. And so we just came up with the concept of, we need to have a platform where we have this conversation of real topics impacting women, that impact people of color and other vulnerable populations, and shine a light on them. Because they're not getting talked about. There has been a lot more visibility around maternal mortality here in the past 5 to 6 months, I would say, and thankfully. And so the concept of the couch is that in my house, we'd always gather at my house all the time, and we would all pile on my couch. And it's the place where you can really have real conversations, either that or a kitchen table. And so I was like, let's go with the couch where we can just sink in and have conversations. So before COVID, our intent was, and actually we did this, where we took the couch as a physical pink couch that we have, and the couch shows up wherever there's a story to be told. And so we went to Atlanta to have a conversation with some NFL players around mental health. We'll air that next month. We went to actually back to Boston in October to have a conversation with Congressman Joe Kennedy, again, around maternal mortality. We've gone many different places. So yeah, that was during COVID, but we intended to go more places to have these uncomfortable conversations about stories that matter to those of us. And so now we've kind of iterated a few times. Now we are we're live. You can follow us, find us at the official Pink Couch on pretty much anything. And so our next show is going to be actually on myths, conspiracy theories, and other fake news, with a highlight around this vaccine. But we'll tackle a lot of different things that people that again go back to fear, or that often people are acting from a place of not having all the facts. So we'll be tackling that conversation, having a couple of physicians working on getting the Surgeon General to join that conversation, and that'll be on the 28th of this month.
I love it. I got a question for you. So
yeah,
when Carissa had Johnny here about 2.5 years ago, she went in for a C-section, and I was reading and doing research on that, and that the percentage of problems that could arise going through a C-section, I was very surprised by, and I actually would have probably asked her to not go C-section because she chose to after I read that information. So when you were talking about that, I'd love to know why, in today's age, that it's a 4 times higher death rate for women of color than it is for everybody else. Can you dig into it a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's this thing called bias, whether it's unconscious or conscious bias, and how that translates into healthcare. At Kaiser, we would call it culturally competent care. So we all have bias. When we see someone walking down the street that might look a little, based on our experiences, we have a different response. We all have it. The growth opportunity is to know it, claim it, learn from it, and hopefully modify it. In healthcare, though, what happens is that there are assumptions that are made. So, for example, I, again, as a C-suite executive and the owner of our own company, have spent my entire life. There's only been, with few exceptions, where I present as, checking in, whether it's when I was pregnant and I had 2 C-sections, when I'm going in for a physical, when I'm going in for a problem, what have you, or taking my kids in. I've been, I'm sorry, we don't take Medicaid. And I'm like, who are you talking to? There are questions around, well, when I've asked a question around a particular lab result, it's well, because you eat so much fried chicken, I don't eat meat. Just assumptions that are made. These are true stories. And there are assumptions that are made just by the color of my skin, that I must be uneducated, that I must be poor, that I must have my health insurance subsidized. And so there's these assumptions that are just made often by people in the clinical setting. And I'm generalizing, there are some amazing gems that are there, but they're honestly, right now, they're the exception and not the rule. And partly because, it's kind of the blessing and the curse. In, Kaiser Permanente, what I love about them from an evidence-based medicine perspective, they talk a lot about population management, which has been trending in mainstream healthcare for a while. But population management comes with some generalizations and assumptions. That's a good thing. So you tend to learn from, diabetics and people with CHF and people with other types of diseases. You tend to learn when you look at populations of people who have that disease or are trending towards that disease. That's a good thing. Where that becomes not such a good thing is when you over extrapolate some of the population, when you're looking at people of color or people of, specific areas of geography. And while some of that might be true, what we need to get back to is how do we look at the individual and generate more and have come from a place of empathy more than we are coming from a place of generalization. And so for me, I think there is a big lack of empathy of looking at the individual and understanding the individual first and foremost. So
it's just amazing to me that there are a vast, not a majority, hopefully it's not a majority, but there's that many people out there that still think that way.
Yeah. And it might be, it might be unconscious. I mean, so again, folks that are going, they're trained that way.
But fried chicken, for Christ's sake. I mean, I like fried chicken.
I think I remember you winning a chicken eating contest.
Come on. Yeah. What's that say about me? It says I like fried chicken.
I know. And it exists. And the only way, going back to another reason why I started the Pink Couch, we don't talk about these things. We don't. Well, no.
When I was putting this together, I texted you last night or the night before saying, "Is it okay to talk about this?" Because it makes me nervous a little bit. And thank God I know you so well because there's different people I've talked to in the podcast before that I wanted to talk about this kind of information, and it's almost like it's such a weird thing that everybody is so worried about talking about this shit. And I go back to, I grew up in a town of about less than 2,000 people. When you go to the census today from Mount Carroll, Illinois, it's 98.6% white. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I was like 7 or 8 years old, there was a guy named Dave Boyd who, black guy, married a white girl named Cass. And it was a big uproar in Little Mount Carroll, Illinois, that this black guy was marrying this white girl. Mm-hmm. And I remember meeting him at church. He went to our church and just the nicest guy ever. Oh, and by the way, nuclear physicist at the nuclear power plant in Byron, Illinois. And I remember my dad said just the most derogatory shit you can imagine. Mm-hmm. And I said, Dad, he's a nuclear physicist. And I remember thinking at 7, 8, 9, 10 years old what it was that I'm like, my dad is so confused. Mm-hmm. Because my mom, on the other hand, is, the power behind everything in my life is my mom. Same thing with Chris's mom, my wife's mom. And I just remember, I'm just like, he is so confused. And that whole family, Dave and Cass Boyd, just took over that whole town with their love and won over everybody. And it reminded me so much of, when I was doing research on your grandfather, the people that have that power to look through all of the bad things that are going on in this world and just knocking them all down one by one by one. And I just kind of remembered that. But to hear you talk about, this just breaks my heart. And that's why I want to dig into stuff like this, because for me, I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? So
wait. First of all, I didn't know we could cuss. So can we do a redo? No.
This is a podcast. You've been around me a long time. We can cuss.
Hell yeah. And then can I make a comment about not wanting to talk about it?
Yeah.
So the first topic we talked about on the Pink Couch was called Enough. And it was, I think, maybe 3 weeks after what happened with George Floyd. And so just bear with me a quick second that how we were planning something totally different. And I remember when it happened, when George Floyd happened, I had about 3 to 5 people of my white friends reach out to me. Are you okay? And I was like, first one, I was like, hey, yeah, I'm cool. How are you? How's the family? Second one, I'm just checking in on you. Hey, I'm good. How are you? Third one, I'm like, what the hell's going on? Do y'all know something I don't know? And then they're like, just want to make sure you're okay. And then the fourth one that called me, and we talked probably half of her trip from Houston to road trip from Houston to Colorado. And she's like, hey, I just wanted to talk to you around how you're doing. And I was like, all right, that's it. What's happening? And she was like, George Floyd. And I was like, uh-huh. and then she started talking a little more, and I was like, oh, y'all just recognizing what we've known and we have seen forever. You know, I can't breathe. A knee on someone's neck didn't start with George Floyd. You know, there were many incidents before. The difference is with George Floyd, I mean, it was COVID television all day, every day. You know, even at that point, you know, our president, you know, his shenanigans had taken a back burner to, it was COVID all the time. And this was we didn't have sports. We couldn't go outside. We couldn't do anything. Kids were home. We couldn't do anything. And so this was an opportunity where more people saw. And it took me a minute, and then I never will see the whole thing, because that's just, I know how the story ends. And so we talked about it. And one of the things, because I have a lot of my Black friends who said, I'm sick about trying to educate people on us and our culture. I'm sick about it. And so what we did in that episode, and I'm trying to find it because I was in charge of technology. Anyway, I digress. But one of the things that I every show that we do, we talk about issues, but the difference at the end, we don't just talk about it, it's about doing something. So we always reserve some do something. And I took people through an exercise. And one of the things around was, it was rooted in empathy. And then the ask that I had for my non-Black friends was to, at the end of it, it was a picture that I had them draw with their eyes closed. I said, I want you to frame this. I want you to put it in your house. I want you to take a picture of it and send it to me. And when people come and say, what is that hideous thing that you have framed? You don't have kids that young to draw something so horrible, that you're able to tell the story around why you should develop empathy. What's wrong with this issue? And you gotta talk about it. A lot of reasons why we're not there is because it's the great undiscussed. And so people who look like you, particularly white men, because you're sitting at the top of the food chain, it won't change until the John Zinks of the world are having the conversation. And on the flip side, what I challenge every single one of my Black friends, so you're okay with how things are? And they're like, no, but you have an opportunity to educate, to bring someone along, and you're missing out on that defies common sense. And so I think both have opportunities here. And what I have noticed since that time, I've had more and more and more conversations around that. And to me, and with the John Zinks of the world, and the Johnetta Zinks of the world. And I love it. And I think change can happen, but talk about it. We don't talk about it at work because it's uncomfortable. Yeah, it's uncomfortable, but you can see that I'm Black. I can see, and you know, there's political, whatever, but asking from a place of empathy, I think you can never go wrong. And even starting with, this might be uncomfortable. Tell me if I'm about extending grace. And I think, and I believe others will extend grace when they know you're coming from a place of empathy.
Well, I agree. And I was so looking forward to having this conversation just because of what you just said. I think as long as there's conversations about everything and anything, and, freedom of speech is everything, we should be able to talk about everything. And that's the only way we're going to get somewhere.
Yep.
So, the whole summer between COVID and then what happened to George Floyd and then what was going on through America, it was just unbelievable. For me as a white man growing up in a town of 98.6% white people, I don't get it. And that's because, until I moved to California, I mean, you're one of, a couple of handfuls of black friends I've ever had. Not my fault. It's just the way it is. And, it's just living in that little bubble. All I know is the people I know. And I was doing some research getting ready for our conversations today, and I was reading through all this stuff about, educating myself on kind of what was going on and how to have empathy for the Black Lives Matter and all the rest of this stuff. And there was one thing that almost made me laugh. It was like, it was telling a white person to go out and consciously try to make black friends. And I'm like, I don't like to go out and make new friends anyway. And it's like, I know you and I met on a blind date.
Yes.
And it was a blind date that your ex-husband and I set up. And then Carissa, my wife, and you both didn't want to go on it because we had set it up. And it's like, I just thought back to when we met. I wasn't looking for a black friend. I wasn't looking for a white friend. I wasn't looking for an Asian friend. I was looking for a friend.
Right.
And it was just like, I was reading through that last night and just going, this is laughable. And that came from CNN, by the way. And I'm just like, all right, they're telling me to go out and do this. This is ridiculous. It's just like, and you also can't be colorblind, like some people say. That's just stupid. So it's just, for me, just having this conversation is so refreshing, and I appreciate you doing it.
You know what I love is that you didn't say, I don't see color. Because I know why people have said that, but in this, I think what I'd love for all, and you didn't say this, but I'd love for people to transition to, it's okay to see color. It is okay. What we need to do is start accepting our diversity. Yeah. I am one of how many million black women, and there's significant diversity amongst us. And that's okay. I love it. That's how you get to change. So
speaking of black women, you've got a 26-year-old named Jasmine.
Yay.
And a little boy, no more, named Jure, who's 24. And it makes me feel old when I see pictures of them on Facebook because now they're grown adults, for God's sake.
Yeah, I know.
What are they up to? So Jasmine is here with me, not here with me physically. She actually lives about a mile away. She is third-year med student at Georgetown. And not surprising. I mean, this is the girl that read an encyclopedia at, 3, 4, I don't know, whatever. That's what she likes to do for fun. And she also has a side hustle of personal trainer, which is, I don't know how you do that in med school. So she's doing well. I have her, actually, I wouldn't say hire her because I'm not paying her, but I'm making her call me every day and make me do 5 minutes worth of exercise, but she's doing phenomenal. Jure, he is actually out there in the Bay. He's in San Francisco. Despite my attempts to get him to move to the East Coast, he's out in San Francisco. Now he's the one that when he, I was like, oh, you want to go to college? I was worried about that one. I was worried, and I was trying to make peace with it. But no, he's doing exceptional. He's a tremendous young man. And it's interesting, as you were talking about how we met on the blind date. For those listeners out there, just so you know what type of human John is, my then husband at the time, that sounds like I had like 6 or 7 of them. Must be number 7. No, so when I was married, he was out of the country. And I remember for Jure's 10th birthday, you're like, you said, can I take him? And so
John came, you got Jeray, you spent the day with him. We all went to a baseball game, went to see the Giants, went to ride your bikes. That's the type of human you are. You spent the whole day with someone that wasn't your kid for his 10th birthday. And he still talks about that. So just a little shout out of love for you. And, but they're doing exceptional. They're doing really, really well. You know, as a parent, you know that that's your hope for your kids, is just that they are happy, thriving, productive human beings.
Well, Johnny's 2.5 right now, and he's nowhere close to reading an encyclopedia. So great.
You got time.
I don't think so. He came from me. So you're back, like you said before, you're back in your hometown of DC. What do you love about DC?
Oh my gosh. So I am a urban girl. I mean, I love the hustle and bustle, I don't like to be like, but there's like Fifth Avenue of New York. That's way too much hustle bustle. So I like to be on the edge of being able to walk to restaurants and bars, back in the day when you could do that. I like being in a place where there's major sports teams. I like being able to hop. And we're not going to talk about who's good or who's not. I like to be able to hop on a plane or get in my car in nanoseconds, be in New York or Pennsylvania or wherever. It's, you can state hop relatively easy. I love the diversity that exists here. One of the things when I was moving back a little over a year ago, and I was coming to check out the place I'm in now, about 10 years ago, because I'm right around the corner from Howard University, I probably wouldn't have lived here. Why? Because it was 99.9% Black folks. I don't want to be anywhere where there's all of one thing. I just don't. I like diversity. And I was coming down the street, and there was this white woman walking on a bike with her dog, and there was, a few gay couples, interracial gay couples. There's an old Black couple. There's an old white couple. I think the folks across the street might be selling some drugs. It just is it's very diverse. And I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. So I love that. But more than everything, I was born here. So I was literally born in Washington, D.C. in Walter Reed Hospital. Lived in Maryland, all up and down Maryland for the first 11 years of my life. A lot of my family is here. My grandfather, who you mentioned, is here. And so I wanted to come, being an empty nester. I wanted to be close to family. And so that's the biggest win for me, is being close to family that I can't see because they're too old and I don't want to give them COVID.
Well, let me talk about this for a second. So your grandfather, Lieutenant General Julius Becton Jr.
Yes.
Colin Powell counts him as a mentor. He's a trailblazer and one of the USA's most dedicated public servants. Served in the Cold War, Korean War, and Vietnam War. Distinguished Service Medal, 2 silver medals, 2 Legion of Merit medals, 2 Purple Hearts. And I read up on this. So he was sent to Germany to, I'm not sure what he was doing over there. I can't remember everything I was looking into yesterday, but he was sent in there, and Germany's like, listen, this Black guy's not gonna be able to do this. So whatever. And then by the time he got done going in there and taking care of everything, they gave him Germany's merit, the Knight Commander's Cross of the Merit of Germany. So when he came in, when he was positioned there, they were like, "This ain't gonna work." And then by the time he got done, they gave him a Medal of Honor for what he had done over there.
Yeah.
So after he got done with that, he became the director of foreign disaster assistance, and then he was the director of FEMA under Ronald Reagan.
Yep.
Wasn't done there. Then he went into education, and has he stopped working yet? He's in his 90s, right?
He's in his 90s. Yeah, he's in his 90s. Yeah, he's finally stopped working. But yeah, that's my dude. He is why I am, period. And it's interesting for me thinking about role models and mentors. His life is just a testimony of leadership, of really puckering up and kissing dragons. Oftentimes he would go somewhere and this guy's not for us, because he's bold, he's fearless, he's tough on people, but it's because he oozes empathy. He believes in fighting for what's right, and I am thankful that's the bar for me. Right now, I'm woefully short of that bar, but that's the bar for me. And he is exceptional. He is an exceptional human being. I quote him often. It's the times that I'm around. Like, I have one of Colin Powell's leadership PowerPoints, and excuse me, I should say had. Back to technology. It died. I don't know where it is. It's probably in some cloud somewhere. But I use often, and he, like you said, he credits my grandfather for a lot and opening up a lot of doors. I remember trying to get in to a meeting when I went on my own, when I left corporate America and started Bambü Roots, and I did a name drop. And this guy was like, "Hey, great conversation, da 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 da," and he was just dismissing, and he was actually a general, and I said, "I think you know my grandfather," and he's like, "Oh, who's your grandfather?" And I told him. He stopped, told the guy next to him, cancel my next meeting, and we had a whole conversation. And that's the kind of respect that he absolutely deserves, and I'm biased, but he absolutely deserves, because he has done a lot for our country, 100%.
Well, in doing research for getting ready for this podcast today, I found the Library of Congress had a video of him with his autobiography was coming out. And usually I just go through and I find a couple little talking points and stuff like that. And I watch the whole freaking thing, because he's just, you can see that he does ooze that charisma.
Yeah.
There was interesting things, there were funny things. It's like, and I told myself, I'm like, this is where Robin came from. Because, when Carissa and I got together and met you, it was just always such a fun time sitting around. There was always interesting conversation. It was always caring. There's always empathy, and there's always fun, and it was really interesting to do that. So, now he dealt with racism, prejudice, and segregation, back in the day when it was pretty much the rule of the land. The things that he changed by doing the things he did and being such a big figure, has it been hard for you ever over the years living up to being in someone's quote unquote shadow like that, like somebody's such a big presence like your grandfather?
No, I think it's part of my DNA where, I love the name of your podcast of True Ambition. I stumbled upon this statement a while ago around, how big is your ambition? And that's been part of my DNA, my earliest memory, where I was second grade and running for student government, and I won. And just this level of fearlessness that I credit a lot for just his story, his testimony, and paving the way. And I just kind of look at it that my problems are like this. His problems were like this. His accountability like this. Mine, not so much. And so to me, it is just, I don't spend a lot of time in fear. I don't give it energy. And for me, it's not so much as putting pressure on myself. I definitely, I allow myself to have grace, and a lot of that has come with gray hair and age, if you will. But no, I am a pretty ambitious human, and I'd like to believe that I inherited his empathy as well as his toughness and fearlessness. And so I'm proud. I'm honored to call him my grandfather, because he's pretty badass. And one thing, they named the FEMA training center after him, so he has a building named after him as well. So just wanted to get that out there. That happened, I think, a couple years ago. So anyway, yeah, no, I am honored. I am a proud granddaughter, and being military, he numbers us. So I was granddaughter number 2. Granddaughter number 1, my sister, there's one in every family. She's doing her thing. So when I would MC his 90th birthday, I MC'd he and my grandmother, who passed last year, their 70th wedding anniversary. And every time I would say, I'm granddaughter number 2, but in military you close the ranks, and now I'm granddaughter number 1. And I know that I am more focused on my cousins and others that are underneath me, to make sure that I'm trying to set some sort of example for them. And that's just something that I think comes with being a veteran.
Well, 70 years of marriage. I mean,
yeah.
When did they get married? How old were they?
I know, 8. No, they were young. They were like early 20s.
Was it like high school sweetheart type thing?
They were in rival high schools. Yeah, in Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Well, that's
Lower
amazing.
Marion. Yeah. Yep.
So, question about the media. So, do you think that the media helps or hinders race relations in the U.S.?
Great question. And I'm going to give a politician answer. I think it's both. I definitely think it's both. The help part is that it's being discussed in a different way. I think that's evolved over the years, where there is conversation around race and the challenges of race, coronavirus, and talking about, the disparities that are happening in communities of color, and giving a platform to issues that George Floyd, not that he asked for a platform, but providing that platform for others to see what's happening. I think that's, you can't get over it if you're not talking about it or showing it. Where I think it is hurtful, is, not all mediums and medias are created equal. And I think what has happened in the media, particularly in our news areas, is that I remember there used to be reporters and journalists. Now there's commentators and and like boxing ring callers. I mean, it is just that to me is I don't believe that is as helpful. I tend to like news to be more along the lines of weather, meaning the facts are the facts.
Right. Data.
It's raining.
Yeah, we have data and we have information, and here it is.
Yeah.
I think that I totally agree with you, because I've had conversations with people before that as soon as they had money that was put behind ads that have to keep people on all the time, to 24-hour news, I think it just ruined it. And then you've got Facebook, you've got all these different things that keep people on those mediums, and just another reason to keep somebody on a platform. And it was in the middle of COVID, I made a conscious choice to get off of watching all news, getting myself off of Facebook as much as possible, except to post a picture of Johnny every once in a while. And my happiness level went through the roof. Every once in a while I'd check some of my news online or something like that. But other than that, I just got off of it altogether. And it's just, I Oh my gosh. I couldn't get off of it fast enough.
Yeah.
And it was horrible. And then it turned all of my bad thoughts went to good thoughts after that, because most of the time the thoughts in my head are great, and they were getting worse and worse every moment that I was sticking to those mediums.
And I think there's that. I subscribe to that. Although I didn't disconnect. I have to inundate, and then okay, I'm done. But I do believe that when you are surrounded by negativity, it's like a bad fart. it sticks to everything.
Did you smell Ed? I think, is it coming through the Zoom?
I mean, it just sticks to everything. And so, and there's something to be said that if you are in toxic relationships, toxic environments, it starts to permeate. And conversely, if you are in positive air, it just helps it permeates. So I there's definitely something to that, 100%.
So when everything was going down this summer, and you had all your white friends calling you about asking how you were, the serious part of it is, when this is all going down, did you have conversations with your kids? And what were they?
Wait, you can probably hear the police sirens. It's been all night, given what's happening like 2 miles from my house. Those are frequent conversations. The first one that I did, the first conversation I have had, and I have every time, is with my son. And I made him every morning for, I don't know, about 2-3 weeks. You will call me and you will text me every morning just to say, I'm alive, have a good day, or whatever. You just hug a little bit tighter, a little bit closer. And that, so I will correct what I've been saying. That is my fear, the well-being and safety of my children and of other people's children that have been that is my biggest fear. And so it's a conversation. I know that was something else that was brought to light, that, it's just a conversation that every Black family has with their kids. I can't even remember the first time I had it with my kids, and it's an ongoing one. It never stopped. It never stops. And it's every lesson, every death, every opportunity, everything that's in the news. I always take it as an opportunity to remind and I tell my son, given the story you were sharing earlier, he lives with his girlfriend. I don't want to talk about it. and she's white. And I would tell him, and remember, you're Black. Because there still exists, even in the Bay Area, it still exists, this notion of the looks and the issue and the people who have big problems with that. And because the temperature is so high right now in our country, I worry about that. And so it's a never ending conversation. I mean, my kids and we're texting this morning about it. So it's part of our, how you doing? Did you see that play by that defensive back? And remember, you're Black. It's just an ongoing conversation, more so over the past several months, past several years than it has been. Just again, given the temperature, I just worry about them.
So as a Black parent, does this start from the time they're born?
Yeah, it from the time they can comprehend. You have the conversation about what to say, what to do, how to act with your white friends. I mean, where we grew. My kids spent a good chunk of time in Danville. I think Whiteville, 0.1% Black. I mean, and the Black folks are like E40 and other rich folks who, I mean, there wasn't, in Sully. I mean,
Captain did E40 Sully grow up there?
He lived there.
I know. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding about that.
Oh, okay.
No, he moved there.
I know you know that, Mr. Music Man. No, but I mean, and then like Sully was our neighbor. He lived right up the street. So he hung out with. He had a lot of white friends. They were like 6 black kids in the school. When my kids left, it went down 50%. That's not real math. But anyway, so it was always an ongoing conversation. Sorry, you can't do what they do. I mean, in general, forget being black, in my household, my kids, you can't do what everyone else does. But you cannot do what others do, right, wrong, or indifferent. It is what it is. And I tell my daughter, as a woman, as a girl, sorry, it would be nice is as a young girl, you could walk by yourself at 1 a.m. in the morning, but you can't. I wish you could, but you can't. It's not safe for women to do that alone. It's not safe for black men to be in some such situations, particularly, and I hate to say involving police. I have to say, actually, my heart rate has finally gone down. It used to be up until I would say about two years ago, my heart rate would increase when I would see a police officer. And I'm a tax abiding woman with no criminal record, and my heart rate would go up. I have had billy clubs pulled out on me. I've seen the injustice. And interestingly, I don't blame the individual. I blame the system. And it's not the system of just the police system. This country was founded on racism. I mean, we invaded the Indians' land. I mean, come on. And it just snowballed from there. Invaded the Indians' land with slaves from Africa. I mean, come on. It was founded on racism. And anyone who chooses to not, you're not based in fact. And so it's part of our history, part of our culture. And it just is what it is. And until we start to unravel some of the systemic issues, it's going to continue. It's not about more training. It isn't about more training because they managed to not kill white people at the same rate. It's not about that. There's a complete overhaul that needs to happen. Anyway, I digress. But
well, no, I'm thinking about, because Johnny's so big, I usually put him down at night, because it's hard for Carissa to put him over the side of the crib. And I'll sit there and say our prayers together at night while I'm holding him. And my biggest fear that I have with him is that I'll die too early. That's all I got. I don't just to think about the fears that you have to live with on a daily basis is absolutely mind-boggling to me. I've known you for all these years and have no clue that this is what my friends have to deal with. Yep. So my favorite thing about this podcast is I get to actually know all my friends. Because it's something that we all need to know about each other. And it'll help open up all these lines of communication between all of us. So we can understand what the hell's going on with our fellow Americans.
And the other love fest that I'll have with you and Carissa. I'm sure you remember this incident at your house. I think it was her brother made some derogatory comment, and I didn't have to say a word. I didn't have to. Why? Because you and Carissa just rained holy hell on his ass. And I'm like, that's and I share that one just as a friend, as someone who loves you and your family. And again, going back to it is those moments, that is when things are going to change. I have another guy who is also a co-author of the Kiss Your Dragons book, Michael Harper. We did a anti-conference, an unconference, I think back in October, and it was around diversity and inclusion, and it was really about sticking up the middle finger to the traditional ways that corporations have just, kind of had your diversity and inclusion starter pack, and then, okay, we're cool. And so he's always the one that says, I've always known him to be the one that says, okay, now when you think about diversity, he would always say this, regardless of what topic we're talking about. There's too many white people in this conversation. We need to bring constantly. And so as we were planning for this unconference, he says, I said, it'd be great as an editor and as a great storyteller, and he oozes this word around empathy. I said, it would be amazing for you to do kind of a quick TED Talk type segment. He's like, okay. And then we were talking once at dinner, and he said, I think I'm gonna call it I'm a racist. And I just laughed. He's like, no, seriously. And I'm like, okay, if I'm gonna put on the spectrum of racist, you're kind of hanging out there in the Martin Luther King end of things. I mean, I don't, what? And he just said, I still have bias. Again, everyone has bias. And I was like, that's amazing. And then it's interesting when I was telling you about the folks who called me, and I was talking to someone that was a part of this organization that we both are contracted with. And I said, I'm surprised I have not heard from Michael. And I said, I don't say that in any sort of way of like, I'm disappointed. I'm just like, there was a little bit of me that was disappointed. And then I overheard a conversation he was having about how he spent his weekend. It was, he lives in Kentucky, and he spent the weekend at the protest. This was back when all the protests were happening. I was like, in Kentucky, they protest? Any event, he said he and a number of people were standing there linked arm in arm to protect the Black protesters. Oh, I'm getting teary-eyed. That is when it will change. And I'm getting a little teary-eyed because I'm also getting a gazillion of text messages, because again, what's happening 2 miles away, and people are worried about safety for me. Yeah. So anyway, I'm encouraged, and yet I'm still sad that we are where we are. And even though this isn't all about race, what's happening up the street, there's significant racial undertones that are happening. And, I was accidentally trapped in a demonstration a few weeks ago because I was watching sports and didn't realize there was a demonstration, and was surrounded by a number of Proud Boys. So that was not fun. So anyway, I digress. It's a little moment because they are all over my town. So anyway.
Well, these are great conversations because for me in my world, I mean, Ed and I were talking prior to us having this conversation. So I told him about some of the things we're going to talk about. Yeah. And we're in such a bubble. I mean, we don't even realize it. And I appreciate you talking about it so candidly, because these are the things that I need to hear. Everybody needs to hear. So I appreciate you talking about it. So now we have a big question we need to ask people. This is something we need to clear up for everybody. So when somebody tells you you're going to a cocktail party, what exactly does that entail?
Okay. To me, cocktail party, and I'm no Google or no Webster, aficionado, but cocktail party signifies black tie affair. Tuxedo, fancy dress, lots of makeup and heels. That's what cocktail party. And I would venture, if we were to do a poll, I'm going to venture that would be more than 95% of individuals would agree with that definition.
All right. So here's the backstory for everybody. So Carissa's birthday party, which was back in October, my surprise for Carissa was to get a hold of Robin, and Robin flew in, and she said, this is like a month ahead of time or something. I said, I think it's going to be cocktail or something like that. She said, okay. So then she flies in, comes in for the surprise, and everybody in there is like in jeans. And maybe like some people were dressed up a little bit, but
no.
Robin and is it Thomas?
With a fancy top.
Oh, yeah. Was it Thomas that was with you?
Yes.
Okay. He comes in full tux, and Robin's got this beautiful flowing gown on. And she just comes up to me and says, "I'm going to fucking kill you."
I'm like walking in, and I tell this story probably once a week because it is hilarious. I'm walking in, and Carissa's on the other side of the room. So I literally, and I'm walking fast. I'm trying to get to her before she turns around. And I'm walking and I'm surveying the room, and everyone's looking at me for, I think, two reasons. One, because I was clearly sticking out like a sore thumb with the fancy dress, and there was only a few black people there. and I'm sure they were probably like, "Oh, she must be the entertainment." I was in complete hair, makeup, dress. It was hilarious, and I'm like, yeah, that was awesome. I'm so glad that we did that. That was awesome.
Okay, so I think I already know the answers to a couple of the questions I had here. They're probably going to go back to your grandfather. So I'm not going to ask you about those. One thing I'm going to ask you is the same thing I ask everybody at the end of the True Ambition podcast. So True Ambition and the name of this and the name of the book that I'm working on right now, True Ambition, come from a 12-step program that I went through. It says that true ambition is not what we thought it was. True ambition is the profound desire to live usefully and walk humbly under the grace of God. When I read that about 5+ years ago, kind of changed my perspective and changed my life, because I've always been ambitious, and I think I was just earlier on in life ambitious for the wrong things. When I changed things up to kind of be a servant and try to not just make money, not get laid, not get power, to try to go out and help other people, that's when my life really changed. So the people I talk to, they've all gone through something to lead them to where they are today. So my final question for you is, what is your true ambition, both in your personal life and in your professional life moving forward?
And that is, that is one of those questions. That's a dope question. And I, as I was saying earlier around being ambitious, my ambition, how I define ambition, has changed over the years. So I would, I would chase positions, roles, organizations based on the who and the what. Who in terms of, ooh, that's a very well-known company, or that's a really cool leader. So who in terms of the company level, the individual level. The what was in terms of, okay, whatever I'm going to be doing was kind of secondary. And I'm sorry that the third thing actually was in how much. And so when I was younger, how much was number one, and then what, and then who, and then as I aged and the order shifted. But I would say over the past 4 or 5 years, it's not who, it's not what, it's not how much, but it's why. It's my why. I fell into healthcare. I'm a sports fanatic. Go Buffs, go Lakers, go Steelers. I thought I lived with football players in college. I worked for the head coach when we won national championship. I go all over the country when it's not COVID to games. And on accident, I followed a stupid boy after college to out of state. And I said, let me just take this job here at Blue Cross Blue Shield. And day 88 of a 90-day waiting period, back in the day when you had those before your health insurance kicked in, I had to go to the ER. Day 89, I had to go back because they botched what they did in day 88. Day 120, the bills started rolling in because my health insurance hadn't kicked in. And then going back to my roots as, again, the servant leader, I'm like, this is not okay. This is inhumane. And so I decided in that moment that I would forego my sports love in terms of working in that space, but just make sure I'm the best fan that I can be. But my who, what, and how much was, my what of that was really around, I don't want other people to have to go through what I went through and that's mostly from a financial standpoint. And I've always wanted to help people. in terms from a healthcare setting. My why now, given whether it's the pink couch or me leaving corporate America and starting my own thing, my why is I have a lot of passion. I have a lot of runway. I have a network. I have assets at my disposal that can be used to help a lot of people. And so my why is, I hope at my, before I say that, I going back to how the definition of ambition, I believe God put me on this earth to serve a purpose to help masses of people. I didn't know what it was until fairly to the last probably 5 years. Hence why I wrote a book, hence why I started Pink Couch, hence why I left the corporate America. And so what I hope it's for me, personal and professional are one. I don't separate. I'm the same Robin as a mother, as a friend, as a girlfriend, as a wife, as an employee, I'm the same. And what I hope people say about me, I tend to measure things that, when, looking backward or when it's all said and done, at my funeral, hopefully people come and I don't want them to talk about, oh, she put on a really good workshop or she could write a really doggone strategic plan. She wrote a really good book. But what I hope people say is how I was able to enhance their lives, those around them, and others, whatever that may be, in a small or a large way. I believe that as a servant leader and as a servant of God, that is my role. I won't get preachy and say that's everyone's role, but I believe that's my role. And as the granddaughter number 2, close ranks number 1. That's the legacy as a Becton that I am obligated and honored to leave. So
awesome. Well, I love it. I will get preachy and tell everybody out there who's listening and watching this, if you want to be successful, go out and serve other people.
Yes.
If you want to keep doing what you're doing right now, keep doing it and see how that works.
Yep.
That's where we're going to leave it. We love you, and I thank you so much for joining us here today. And everybody, thanks so much for tuning in to True Ambition, and we'll see you next time.
The True Ambition podcast is brought to you by IT Avalon. For more information and links to other episodes, please visit www.trueambition.org. Now, go find your true ambition.